Imagine for just a second a natural compound that's 10 times stronger than lutein.
Right.
Now, keep that thought and scale it way up. Imagine that exact same compound being a staggering 6,000 times greater than vitamin C at quenching what scientists call singlet oxygen-free radicals.
Yeah, sounds like something cooked up in a futuristic lab, right?
Yeah.
By some team of biohackers.
Exactly. It sounds totally made up.
It really does. I mean, when you first look at those numbers, they are so massive. It almost sound like a typo in a research paper.
Yeah.
But they're entirely real, and they come from some of the most rigorous, peer-reviewed biochemical assays we currently have.
And that is exactly what we are looking at today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're shining a spotlight on a really fascinating molecule called Astaxanthin.
Or ASX, for short.
Right, ASX.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard of it by name, you have definitely seen it. It's the naturally occurring, deeply red-orange marine pigment that gives salmon their incredible pink flesh. It gives krill their color, and it even gives flamingos their vibrant pink feathers.
It is an incredibly unique molecule. But before we get into what it actually does, I think it's important to set the stage for you, the listener.
Definitely.
Because if you're someone who loves to learn, who is constantly looking to optimize your health, your focus, your physical performance, you have undoubtedly been bombarded by the supplement hype machine online.
The noise is just deafening out there.
Every week there's a new miracle pill. There's just so much noise.
You see a TikTok or a blog post claiming some random algae powder will cure everything from a bad mood to a broken leg.
Exactly.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We want to cut right through that noise for you. We've gathered a massive stack of rigorous sources today. And to be clear, we are exclusively relying on top-tier systematic reviews, comprehensive meta-analyses, and strictly human clinical trials.
Yeah, we want to find out what this molecule actually does when you put it inside a living, breathing human body.
Right, not just a petri dish.
And to make sure we respect your time and your intelligence, we are establishing a very strict rule for today's discussion. We are focusing strictly on the highest quality, trustworthy consensus data.
Consensus being the key word there.
Right. Because if you've looked into Astaxanthin before, you might have seen wild claims about it being a miracle weight loss pill. Or you might have seen wildly mixed results regarding how it affects cholesterol levels.
Yeah, those studies are all over the map.
They are. So we have deliberately filtered all of those contradictory findings out. If the scientific literature shows contradictions, or if the evidence is just too mixed or unproven in humans, we're leaving it at the door. Today, we're providing you with only the most reliable, rock-solid, evidence-based takeaways.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the first question that naturally comes to mind when you hear those crazy numbers, 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, is simply why?
Yeah.
What makes Astaxanthin so fundamentally different from that standard chewable vitamin C tablet sitting in my kitchen cabinet right now?
Well, to understand that, you really have to look at where it comes from and its unique chemical architecture. Natural astaxanthin is primarily derived from a very specific type of microalga.
Hematococcus pluvialis, right.
That's the one. Now, in nature, this algae normally lives in relatively peaceful, watery environments. But when that environment suddenly becomes harsh, let's say the puddle dries up, or it gets exposed to intense, blistering UV sunlight or a lack of nutrients, the algae goes into a drastic survival mode.
It freaks out.
Basically, yeah. It produces massive amounts of astaxanthin as a highly potent shield to protect its own DNA from being completely destroyed.
So it's literally a biological defense mechanism against extreme stress.
Exactly. And structurally, it's completely unique. Think of your body's cell membranes. They're made of a double layer of fats, like a microscopic lipid sandwich.
Okay, a lipid sandwich, I'm with you.
Most standard antioxidants don't interact with that sandwich very well. Vitamin C, for instance, is water-soluble. It can't mix with fats, so it basically just hangs out on the outside of the cell. Then you have things like vitamin E or beta-carotene, which are fat-soluble. They go into the cell membrane, but they just float around entirely tucked inside that fat layer.
Okay, so vitamin C is on the outside, vitamin E is swimming around on the inside. Where does astaxanthin fit into that picture?
This is the cool part. Astaxanthin is a long, fat-soluble chain, but it has these highly specific polar groups on both of its ends, twin hydroxyl and keto groups. Because of this exact shape, the molecule is the perfect length to literally span the full width of your cell's membrane.
Wait, so it's essentially acting like a bridge or an anchor going all the way through the cell wall.
Yes. It anchors itself on the inside and the outside of the cell wall simultaneously. It physically weaves itself right through the membrane.
Wow.
This provides a dual layer of protection against oxidative stress that vitamin C and vitamin E simply cannot achieve on their own. It is literally fortifying the structural integrity of the cell membrane, holding it together while shielding it from damage.
That is such a powerful visual. I'm just picturing millions of these tiny red bridges holding my cells together.
It's a great way to think about it.
But it's not just sitting there acting as a passive wall, is it? Because the sources we looked at highlight that it acts as what they call a hormetic nutrient. What does that actually mean for the person listening?
That's a crucial distinction. It doesn't
Right.
just sit there and passively absorb free radicals like a sponge until it's all used up.
Hmm.
Because of its unique position spanning the membrane, it actively communicates with the cell itself.
No, so.
It stimulates your body's own internal defense pathways. Specifically, it activates a pathway, the NRF2 pathway, that acts like the master control switch for your body's own natural antioxidant production.
Oh, I see.
And at the exact same time, it actively turns down the volume dial on your body's inflammatory pathways like NF-kappa B.
So it's a dual action system. It's a physical shield, but it's also telling your cells to ramp up their own internal defenses and cool down the inflammation.
Precisely. It is highly active cellular communication.
That biological mechanism is incredible. But let's take that microscopic bridge analogy and zoom out a bit. I want to look at how that cellular protection translates into visible, tangible benefits that you or I would actually notice.
Right, the stuff we actually care about day to day.
Exactly. Let's start with the body's largest organ, skin. I know we have a very robust systematic review and meta-analysis from 2021 that looked at 11 different clinical trials. And remembering our rule for today, what is the actual consensus data here?
The consensus here is surprisingly clear for a cosmetic claim. When we look at these pooled trials, which typically involved healthy adults taking doses of 3 to 6 milligrams of Astaxanthin per day over a period of about 8 to 16 weeks, we see moderate, highly consistent, and statistically significant improvements in human skin.
Like what kind of improvements?
Specifically, dermatologists measured actual increases in the skin's moisture content and its elasticity, its ability to bounce back.
See, that's what I love about this data. It's not just someone filling out a questionnaire saying, my skin feels nice today.
All right, it's not subjective.
They actually measured the biochemical changes happening in the tissue. How is that cellular bridge actually changing the skin?
The clinical data perfectly backs up the biological mechanism we just talked about. Think about what damages your skin the most. The sun.
UV rays, right?
Yeah. When UV rays hit your skin, they trigger the production of specific collagen-chewing enzymes. They're called MMP1. These enzymes literally break down the structural collagen that keeps your skin firm.
Ouch.
The clinical trials show that Astaxanthin suppresses those exact collagen-degrading enzymes. By keeping those enzymes in check, Astaxanthin helps protect and preserve the collagen you already have.
So by anchoring into the cells, it's stopping the sun from signaling those enzymes to chew up our collagen. That makes perfect sense.
And it goes one step further. The trials also showed a significant reduction in the oxidation of epidermal lipids.
Which means?
In plain English, that means it stops the essential fats in your skin barrier from going rancid and being damaged by oxygen exposure. It protects the moisture barrier from the inside out.
Okay, so we've got the skin covered. Now, keeping with the theme of visible benefits and things we can actually feel, I want to transition to a very modern-day problem.
Screen time.
Oh, yeah. If you are listening to this right now, there is a very, very high chance you spend hours a day staring at a phone, a tablet, or a computer monitor. I know I do, and by 4 p.m., I'm just rubbing my eyes, feeling that deep ache. Digital eye strain is everywhere.
What's fascinating here is how beautifully the ocular health data tracks with the exact same cellular mechanisms we saw in the skin.
Really?
Yeah. When you are staring at a screen just inches from your face for hours, you are forcing the tiny, delicate ciliary muscles inside your eyes to stay in a state of constant, unrelenting contraction. They're constantly flexing to keep that screen in focus.
Right.
And just like any muscle you flex for hours, that creates a massive amount of localized oxidative stress, exhaust, and just deep fatigue.
It's like making your eye muscles hold a plank all day.
That is exactly what it is.
So what do the clinical trials tell us about Astaxanthin and fixing that specific eye strain?
We have several rigorous randomized controlled trials showing that taking 4 to 9 milligrams a day significantly improves what eye doctors call your accommodative function.
Accommodative function.
That is your eye's ability to smoothly and quickly shift focus from a near object, like your phone, to a far object, like the television across the room. More importantly, for daily life, it dramatically reduces subjective visual fatigue in people who are engaged in heavy visual display terminal work, VDT work.
Now, I noticed in the sources that this seemed especially effective for adults over the age of 40. I'm assuming that's because as we age, our eyes naturally start losing some of that accommodative flexibility anyway?
That's a big part of it, yes.
Yeah.
The older we get, the stiffer those lenses become, and the harder those tiny muscles have to work. But I want to be clear that this isn't just an aging intervention.
Oh.
One of the most compelling trials actually looked at school-aged children. These were kids who are clocking heavy screen time. We're talking over 4 hours a day on tablets and computers.
Wow. 4 hours. And what happened when they gave the kids Astaxanthin?
Giving them just 4 milligrams a day resulted in objective performance improvements in their eye function and significant reductions in their digital eye strain scores.
That's wild.
The reason it works so well is that astaxanthin is one of the rare antioxidants that can easily cross over into the highly vascular, blood-rich tissue of the eye. It's able to deliver that dual-layer cellular bridge protection right where those overworked, exhausted muscles need it most.
That is incredibly relevant. I mean, who isn't staring at a screen for 4 hours a day now?
Yeah.
So it acts as a cellular bridge, it protects our skin's collagen from the sun, and it physically relieves the muscles in our eyes from screen fatigue.
Exactly.
But let's scale this up. What happens if we look at the big muscles? If I'm hitting the gym or going for a long run, I'm creating a ton of oxidative stress in my legs and my lungs. What is the consensus on physical performance?
For that, we turn to a highly comprehensive 2024 meta-analysis. This pooled 11 randomized controlled trials involving about 346 participants. The athletic consensus is that astaxanthin is particularly beneficial for aerobic endurance-style exercise.
Let me stop you there, because the dosing requirements here seemed a bit different than what we saw for just fixing dry skin or tired eyes, didn't they?
Yes, that's an excellent catch. To actually move the needle on systemic athletic performance, the trials indicate you need higher doses. You're looking at a range of 12 to 20 plus milligrams per day.
Okay, quite a jump.
And you can't just take it once before a run. You need to take it consistently over a longer period, usually around 12 weeks, in combination with a regular training regimen.
And if someone commits to that, what's the payoff?
When you do that, the meta-analysis showed significant improvements in overall aerobic performance, basically how long you can go before exhausting. But perhaps the most striking finding was a massive increase in fat oxidation.
Okay, let's be careful here, because we promised at the start no magic weight loss pills. When you say fat oxidation, you don't mean it magically melts belly fat while you sit on the couch.
Exactly. Not at all. We filtered that nonsense out. What it means is that during the actual physical act of exercising, your body becomes much more metabolically efficient at tapping into its fat stores for fuel, rather than just rapidly burning through your easily accessible carbohydrate stores and then crashing.
Oh, I see.
It shifts your metabolic engine to burn fuel more efficiently, which is a huge advantage for endurance athletes.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's think about the aftermath of a workout. Exercise is fundamentally a massive stressor. You are burning energy, creating metabolic exhaust, and literally tearing muscle tissue.
Which brings us to the broader systemic benefits of this molecule. Across 15 different randomized controlled trials, astaxanthin has been shown to consistently lower the circulating markers of cellular damage in the blood.
How does that work?
Well, when you exercise or just live a stressful life, the fats and proteins in your bloodstream take on damage. Essentially, it's cellular exhaust. Astaxanthin specifically lowers the chemical markers like malondialdehyde or MDA and advanced oxidation protein products, AOPP. It pulls those down, showing us that those fats and proteins are taking less damage.
So it's actively lowering the amount of trash floating in the bloodstream.
Yes. And at the exact same time, it significantly boosts your total antioxidant capacity, or TAC. It's simultaneously reducing the cellular exhaust and increasing the size of your body's cleanup crew.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because when we talk about cellular stress, cellular exhaust, and inflammation, it's not just about muscles. It touches literally every system in the body. And the sources highlighted a truly fascinating, deeply specific application regarding female reproductive health that just blew my mind.
This is a perfect example of how profoundly astaxanthin alters the inflammatory microenvironment of the entire body. We have high-quality randomized controlled trials looking at women suffering from polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and endometriosis.
And both of those are painful, complex conditions, heavily driven by chronic systemic inflammation and incredibly high levels of cellular oxidative stress.
Exactly. And they can make fertility incredibly difficult.
So what did the data show when they introduced astaxanthin?
At doses of 8 to 12 milligrams per day, astaxanthin acted as a powerful normalizing agent. The researchers looked specifically at the granulosa cells. These are the cells in the ovary that surround and nurture the developing egg.
Okay.
In inflammatory conditions like PCOS, the microscopic factories inside these nurturing cells, the endoplasmic reticulum, they get completely jammed up. They suffer from massive ER stress, they get overwhelmed, and they start misfolding proteins. The result is a highly toxic environment that leads to very poor egg quality.
It's like trying to grow a delicate flower in toxic soil, but the astaxanthin was actually able to change that soil.
Yes, it significantly unjammed those cellular factories and reduced that deep tissue ER stress. And the clinical outcome of that cellular normalization was remarkable. During assisted reproductive technology procedures like IVF, the women taking astaxanthin had a significantly improved quality of mature oocytes and subsequently much higher quality embryos.
That is just phenomenal. To be clear, it didn't necessarily produce more eggs, right? It just drastically improved the health and the quality of the environment those eggs were developing in.
Yes, it cooled down the inflammation so the body could function the way it was designed to.
That is a phenomenal example of how reducing cellular stress isn't just some abstract textbook concept. It has deeply profound, life-altering clinical applications. Now, speaking of life-altering applications, we have to address the elephant in the room.
The longevity question.
Yeah, you cannot talk about a super antioxidant today, especially one with this kind of data, without bringing up the absolute hottest topic in the health and wellness space: longevity. Is astaxanthin the fountain of youth? If I take this, am I going to live to be 120?
I need to be absolutely unequivocally clear with you, the listener, right now. There are exactly 0 human clinical trials proving that astaxanthin extends human lifespan. None. 0.
Okay, a strict cold water fact check. We appreciate that. But the hype machine didn't just materialize this out of thin air. I've seen the headlines. Where are these massive longevity claims actually coming from?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the claims come from the animal data. And I will admit, the animal data is undeniably fascinating. In rigorously controlled laboratory settings, scientists have tested astaxanthin on C. elegans, a specific type of microscopic worm that is very frequently used in aging research, and it successfully extended their lifespan.
Okay, but a microscopic worm is a long way from a human being. There was a more complex study too, right, with mice?
Yes, and this is the one that really got the longevity community talking. There is a highly rigorous multi-site program funded by the NIH that tests anti-aging compounds. They tested astaxanthin on HET3 mice, which are a specific strain of genetically diverse mice. That makes them a very robust, reliable model for testing.
And what were the results?
The astaxanthin increased the median lifespan of the male mice by a highly significant 12%.
12%. That is a massive jump.
It is huge.
So for you listening, how should you actually internalize this? I mean, 12% is huge, but we aren't mice.
Right. The animal data is incredibly exciting because it proves biological plausibility. It shows that the biological mechanisms astaxanthin triggers actually can slow down the aging process in complex living organisms. But, and this is a massive, towering, but it must be strictly categorized as hypothesis-generating, non-human evidence.
We cannot responsibly infer that taking a pill will magically add a decade to a human lifespan based on current data.
Exactly. The longevity community is very excited, but the human clinical trials simply do not exist yet.
Fair enough. We stick to the consensus data, and the consensus says, great for skin, great for eyes, great for exercise, amazing for cellular inflammation, but the jury is still way out on human lifespan. Now, let's get highly practical. Let's say you've heard all this evidence, and you want to actually try taking astaxanthin. How should you do it?
This is critical.
Because the sources were very clear that just buying a cheap bottle and swallowing a dry pill with your morning coffee might be a complete waste of your hard-earned money.
Bioavailability is everything when it comes to supplements. Astaxanthin is highly lipophilic. That means it is completely fat-soluble and it actively repels water. Think of oil and vinegar separating in a jar. Your digestive tract is a very watery environment.
Right.
If you take a dry astaxanthin capsule first thing in the morning on a completely empty stomach with just a glass of water, it's not going to absorb. You are flushing it right through your system. It is practically useless.
Okay, so what is the optimal strategy? Does this mean I finally have a medically sound excuse to eat an extra avocado every day?
Absolutely it does. The golden rule is that you must take it with fat. Human pharmacokinetic trials, which are studies that track exactly how a substance moves and absorbs through the human body, show that taking astaxanthin with a meal that contains dietary fats, like that avocado or olive oil or eggs, significantly increases how much actually makes it into your bloodstream.
And I saw there was also a note about the type of capsule you buy.
Yes. Better yet, look for lipid-based or micellar formulations. These are supplements where the manufacturer has already pre-dissolved the astaxanthin into a fat base inside the capsule. The data shows these specialized formulations can increase absorption by 1.7 to 3.7 times compared to a standard dry powder capsule.
That is a massive difference. You are getting nearly 4 times the actual benefit just by changing how it's delivered to your stomach. Now, what about the safety profile? If this compound is this incredibly potent at altering our cellular pathways, is it actually safe to take every single day?
The safety profile is exceptionally robust. There was a massive safety review that pooled data from 87 different human clinical trials, alongside data from the European Food Safety Authority. The consensus across the board is that natural astaxanthin is highly tolerated. Typical clinical doses, as we've discussed, range from 4 to 12 milligrams per day.
And higher for the athletes.
Yeah. However, it has been shown to be safe in short-term studies at doses all the way up to 40 milligrams per day, with no serious adverse events reported.
Though it does have one rather unique, if completely harmless quirk if you start taking those really high doses, right? Let's just put this out there so no one panics.
Yes, it's worth mentioning. Because it is such a deeply, intensely pigmented red-orange molecule, remember it's what turns flamingos pink, if you take very high doses, you might notice a harmless red or orange tint to your stool. It is purely cosmetic and completely benign, but it can certainly be surprising if you aren't expecting it.
Good to know. Panic averted. But on a more serious medical note, what are the actual caveats and warnings? Who should not be taking this?
There are 2 critical medical warnings you must be aware of. First, due to a complete lack of targeted safety trials, pregnant and breastfeeding women should completely avoid it. There just isn't the data to guarantee it is completely safe for a developing fetus or a nursing infant, so err on the side of caution.
Makes total sense. And the second warning?
Second, and very importantly, there is a documented medical case report of a potential interaction between astaxanthin and the prescription blood thinner warfarin. The interaction led to an increased risk of bruising and bleeding for the patient. Because astaxanthin may have mild effects on blood flow and how platelets clump together, anyone taking anticoagulants or blood thinners absolutely must consult their doctor before adding this to their routine.
That is crucial advice. Always, always consult your physician before adding a new variable if you are on prescription medication. So, what does this all mean? Let's give you a rapid-fire recap to close out this deep dive. Astaxanthin is a uniquely structured, deeply pigmented marine antioxidant that acts as a physical bridge, anchoring itself across your cell membranes. We filtered out the noise today. We know it is not a magic weight loss pill, and despite the very exciting data in mice, the proof that it extends human longevity simply does not exist yet.
But the clinical truth we did find is incredibly compelling. There is a rock-solid, evidence-based scientific consensus that when taken correctly with dietary fats, astaxanthin does some remarkable things.
Yeah.
It actively improves human skin moisture and elasticity. It physically protects the tiny muscles in your eyes from modern digital screen fatigue. It significantly speeds up aerobic exercise recovery by clearing out cellular exhaust, and it dramatically lowers systemic cellular oxidative stress across the entire body.
It is a truly fascinating molecule with some deeply practical, everyday benefits for how we live our modern lifestyles. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the clinical truth behind the astaxanthin hype. We hope it helped you cut through the noise and feel a little more informed.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final concept to ponder. Think about how we usually talk about nutrition. We have been conditioned to think of antioxidants as little microscopic Pac-Men running around our bloodstream just gobbling up bad free radical molecules until they disappear.
Right.
But as we learned today, astaxanthin doesn't just do that. It literally weaves itself into the physical structural scaffolding of your cell walls. This raises an important question for you to think about. What if we started viewing our diets and our daily supplements not just as fuel to be burned, but as the actual architectural building blocks that determine the long-term structural integrity of our bodies?
A completely different way to look at what we consume. Thanks for diving deep with us today.